What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be talking about why you guys should be playing the role of a therapist on your sales calls and how to actually go about it, right? Before I do that, though, let me go ahead and talk about, one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard in the beginning of my sales journey. And this was by my first ever sales coach by the name of Tommy. So shout out to Tommy if you're watching this, right? And he basically told me, he was like, look, man, when you're talking to a prospect, before you say anything, always ask yourself, like, okay, is this like actually serving the prospect or is it serving me? Right when he first said this, I was like, what do you mean? And then I realized, like, oh shit, he has a he has a very, very valid point. Because guys, a lot of the times, right, and this happened to me a lot, and I've seen this happen to like a lot of sales guys when they're taking their calls. We just sometimes just go on tangents, or we just say dumb shit that isn't relevant to the prospect at all, right? And around that time, we don't realize what we're actually doing, right? Like, we will justify it by being like, oh no, like I was building rapport, or like, I was trying to like get to know the prospect a bit better. But when you really look at it, like objectively speaking, there's like, you really shouldn't have said what you said. Let me give you an example, right? Because I got to put this into some context here, right? So let's just say you're talking to the prospect, and the prospect is like talking about their life story in terms of like how they first started their business and how they got to where they are, and like issues they're having, right? And let's just say that you butt in and you're like, yeah, I remember back when I started so and so and so. You know, if it doesn't relate to what they're saying at all, why say it in the first place, right? Your brain might justify it by being like, oh no, I was just building rapport, I'm trying to get them to like me, but it doesn't work, right? Because why is a prospect there in the first place? They're there because they have an issue, they have a problem, and they're like, okay, can this person help solve the problem? They're not there to listen to your problems as well. How is it helping them in any way? If anything, it's distracting them, right? Because then they start caring more about you and your life story instead of their own, right? So do you want them to like be there to pay you to solve the problem, or do you want them to be like, oh yeah, Hassan also has an issue, let me listen to what his issues are, right? I think you guys are starting to get what I'm saying here. So always, whenever you say anything, always ask yourself, is this serving the prospect in any way, or is it just serving myself and my own ego, right? Now let me put this into context in terms of the whole therapist thing, right? Because I said in the beginning of the call, you guys should be playing the role of a therapist. So let me explain. So typically when people go to therapy, right? I haven't been to therapy yet, but typically when people go to therapy and the therapist is talking to them, it just starts off by the therapist asking them a bunch of questions and just listening the entire time, right? The prospect doesn't go, or sorry, not the prospect, the therapist doesn't go and speak to their patient and say, yeah, Timmy, growing up, things were really hard for me too, right? I totally understand where you're coming from. No, they don't say things like that. They just they write down a bunch of notes. They really, really, really focus on listening. They ask a ton of questions, and then from there, they go into isolating problems, and they try to like figure out, okay, how can we like solve Timmy's issue here, right? What can we do to fix Timmy's problems? But they don't butt in, right? So remember this, guys. If you guys are butting in during your sales calls, things will go bad, right? A lot of friction will happen. So be a therapist, be objective, okay? And be there to solve the prospect's problems. They need you, okay? They don't need a friend, they need someone to help them, okay? So be that guy or girl. Thanks for watching, guys.